Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello.
And you've been playing Ultimate Alliance.
Yes,
3.
I have.
So you showed me, I played a little bit of it, but you're going to lead this. I don't want to dive in too much, but does it live up to the legacy of Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2?
Well, have you played Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2?
Yes, quite a hell of a lot.
Then.
Also, this is a preview, not a review. Don't chastise us. Our review is coming on Friday. I don't think we're allowed to say the time. Friday afternoon, around about the midday point. You'll have to come back and see. Anyway,
It'll be there though.
Carry on.
Yeah, have you played Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2?
Yes.
Well, then you've kind of already played this game in the best way. I don't mean that as a reductive, derogatory. This plays exactly how you'd expect a continuation of Marvel Ultimate Alliance to play, which, you know, is kind of a big deal because even though it is announced and it is a direct sequel, it's by an entirely new team, it's on a different platform. You would expect changes to have been made, and they've refined things, they've introduced new mechanics, but ultimately this plays like a direct sequel to the last game, just kind of like 10 years too late, which is cool. The art style is lovely, it plays well, it just, at least so far, doesn't have that extra oomph to make it something very, very special.
Okay, because I mean, when we played a little bit of the multiplayer, which just seemed to be that playing it on handhelds, I had like two people hunched around a little screen.
Yes.
The way the camera zooms all the way out, because it's not split screen, they try to keep everybody on the same thing, which means that they have to zoom out all the way on a tiny screen with two people with one Joy-Con each.
Yeah.
It was quite a hard way to play that game. I don't know if you've experienced that when you've been playing elsewhere.
Well, that's sort of like where my issues kind of lie, because I first jumped into it last night when I was playing it co-op, and I was playing it on the TV using the individual sort of Joy-Con to control people.
Right.
It was bad. Well, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. It certainly didn't do the game justice.
Right.
It was sort of playable, but when the camera zooms out so far back, it's difficult, even on a big TV, to keep track of your characters because the game is so colourful, and everything just kind of like blurs together in a mass of satisfying pixels and particle effects.
Numbers and everything.
And everything. But that can be difficult to keep track of, especially in co-op. And like you said, when you're playing on the tiny Joy-Cons, either around the small Switch itself or on a TV, it is finicky and difficult to pull off moves, but in my opinion, that's kind of not how it's meant to be played.
Right, okay.
If you play it between Switches, either online or even locally with a proper gamepad, then it would be a much more enjoyable experience. And it's fine anyway, because when you play it in single player, none of that really matters. Everything is clear, the frame rate is solid, and the action feels damn satisfying.
Okay, so let's focus in on the gameplay for a bit, because for me, going through Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 to 2, they kind of streamlined it in a bit of a weird way. They removed the character-specific grapples and little things like that just meant that 2 wasn't as much fun as 1, and its sort of reputation has kind of held that true. How are you finding the gameplay just in general, if no one really knew what this thing plays like? It
plays really solidly. I think the gameplay is satisfying. Having knowledge of the other games in a way kind of hinders rather than helps, because there is so much familiar in a lot of the moves that you're doing, especially the special abilities. If you hold down the right trigger and then you press one of the face buttons, you do one of 4 kind of like special moves, and each character gets their individual ones. And those are really good, and when they connect, it feels satisfying, but it's hard to overlook the fact that a lot of the moves are just carryovers from the previous games. You have Captain America's kind of like shield bash where he runs into people. You have Spider-Man obviously doing the webs, web shooters, and it feels good, but with the knowledge of the previous games in mind, because I actually played them recently. I played them last year, and it just feels very similar. But again, that's not even a bad thing, because it does feel good. And when you're swapping between characters and you're using like kind of fusion moves, when you're combining the different powers and you're taking down bosses and stuff, it is satisfying and good to play. And it scratches an itch, I think, that a lot of games sort of don't these days. You don't really have these semi-isometric top-down like brawlers essentially anymore.
Right.
And I think the Nintendo Switch is a great platform for it. I think if you played this on PlayStation or an Xbox, not to be derogatory to the Switch, but like those consoles lend themselves better to different experiences, perhaps more polished ones, or what you'd expect from the AAA space.
It kind of seems, because I used to always compare, it is kind of like a dungeon crawler, but it is so focused on like melee abilities and specials, and it is so over the top and colourful that like it can distinguish itself from the likes of Diablo, or what it kind of reminds me a little bit of what the Darksiders crew are kind of going for with their new one. Darksiders Legion or something? Forget the name, it wasn't the main installment, but it's whatever the new spin-off is. It kind of reminds me of that. But I guess in terms of like the specials and stuff, you can like chain them together now. Like if you keep pressing L and R together or whatever.
Yeah, well, you kind of could do this in the second game, especially, which was sort of built around like these fusions. And you do have that here when you fire off a move with kind of like Spider-Man at someone. There was a great moment last night. I made my team obviously Spider-Man themed, so I was playing as Miles Morales as Spider-Man. I had regular Peter Parker Spider-Man. I had Spider-Gwen. I had Venom. And when I was doing each one of those has a basic variation on the regular web shooter special ability, but then you can chain them all together, so you're just firing off a lot of them at the same time. And that was satisfying to see them all connect and sort of like take down an enemy.
That was the thing though, because when we were playing, like I was playing as Iron Man, and I was playing as Cap, and I did one of his specials, which was like this, like ultimate guard, which just like kind of gives you a big holographic shield on the screen. It's just meant to like represent the fact that he's blocking against everything. And during that animation, our computer Iron Man blasted a beam off him, Avengers style, and took out a bunch of other people. So it made me think that there must be a whole bunch of dynamic specials in there that just happen based on when you want to chain different animations together.
Yeah, essentially, because I think it kind of works in the way, I haven't properly dug into it yet, I'm only a few hours in. I think it works in the way that each character has sort of like classes of specials. So you have ranged attacks, and you have like, I don't know, big area of effect attacks. And no matter what character you're playing as, you can chain those together based on the classes rather than the specificities. Which I think it works. It works, especially like you said, when you have someone doing a defensive cap shield and you're blasting off an Iron Man beam. It is really satisfying. I think it's sort of like, and you might not like this, Kingdom Hearts 3's combat, where you just spam a load of buttons essentially, and a lot of cool flashy things happen. It feels a little like that. For me, that's fine. That's kind of similar to what the original games did as well, and you are always seeing something spectacular. It doesn't have necessarily the depth, but even then you can chain together combos, and it is more detailed and complex than it might initially appear. Like I was playing as Spider-Man, who is excellent in the game, in the way you go from sort of light attacks to heavy attacks to a swinging kick to shoot back down with the webs in one fluid motion. Feels really satisfying.
Plus, mentioning performance, it runs extremely well. Again, this is just our preview. We'll have a full review on Friday, and we'll actually go into this stuff properly, more definitively, whatever. But just from the few, like you've played, how long have you played?
Probably about 3 hours-ish now.
Right, cool. And we played like just literally like half an hour on our lunch break. But the performance was just liquid. There wasn't any frame rate gaps or anything. It seemed like it seems like it can handle the amount of anarchy that's on screen, which is really good.
This was the biggest first surprise, because although I had seen previews of it before and trailers and stuff, I thought that technically it looks kind of amazing. When I booted it up on the TV, the colors popped. It looked like graphics were really pristine and sharp, and like you said, the frame rate is solid. It never well, at least not yet. Even in the biggest battles, which some of the challenge modes, when you just have hundreds of enemies on screen, it hasn't tanked for me yet. It's always buttery smooth, which is good, because that would be a nightmare if you couldn't see your characters and then it was kind of stuttering along at a snail's pace. But it genuinely looks beautiful. I took some convincing for the cell-shaded art style, because I wasn't sure about it. Wasn't sure about the designs of some of the characters, but it really does fit.
Looking at the final version, I don't know, I keep referring, we keep referring to it as cell shading in the office and stuff. I'm not sure if it is cell shading. Like, it is just like a nice cartoony, like big, very comic booky style art style. Reminds me a little bit like Steve Ditko-y kind of stuff, like really rich colors and everything. But yeah, I wonder if it is actually cell shading. Let's talk a bit about the upgrade system, because I think that's one thing they've barely covered at all. Which, how do you upgrade? You're retrieving certain elements or something?
Well, when you attack people, obviously you get sort of experience points, which upgrade your characters, which unlocks the different special powers you can have. But then you can also tinker those and kind of like upgrade them on a more minuscule micro level.
Is there a loot system?
There isn't a loot system.
Good!
But you have to get sort of things like XP crystals, XP cubes actually, so then you can pump those points into your specific characters and upgrade kind of special abilities. But you've also got this thing called the lab, which is sort of a wider skill tree that, to be honest, is kind of boring, because it's just one of those skill trees where it's like,
Can I guess what it is? Is it plus 3% to attack?
It's not that.
Ooh.
It's kind of, well, it sort of is. It's like plus 20 health, plus 20 durability, plus 20 strength. It works like that. And it's kind of cool to pump
You're not unlocking
points into those
abilities in as much as like a tweak.
This is what will make or break it in the long run for me, because the abilities now are good, the ones I've unlocked. But by the looks of it, each character has 4 each. Whereas I remember in the X-Men Legend games and even the first Ultimate Alliance games, there were more abilities that you could swap in and put on that little reel. I want to know how complex that is, because at the moment it could potentially be lacking in the long run. I think the character customization is something I need to tap into a bit more, because I do know that there are sort of, for instance, other costumes for characters, but I haven't unlocked any yet, and there isn't an option at the screen. I know they exist, but I don't know how they work, or whether they bring new things, or whether they're purely cosmetic. I don't know.
One of the things, because we can like kind of wrap this up kind of thing, but one of the things that stood out to me, and is only in that half an hour, but we did do a couple of boss battles, a couple of levels, a couple of boss battles. That felt to me like it's going to be the structure the whole way through, kind of like what the Lego Marvel superhero games are.
Yes.
Where it's like, here's a level or a couple of levels, and then the boss battle at the end, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
Yes.
Did that start to settle in across more hours as well?
Well, so far it's kept fresh because I like the way that they structure the levels. So I won't spoil too much of the plot, but you are chasing items across various
I wonder what they could
locations of the Marvel
They've
universe.
totally put out there that you're chasing the Infinity Stones.
It's the Black Order, so we're chasing the Infinity Stones around different MCU locations, but each one so far at least has been themed. So the very first one, major level you go through, you're going through essentially a Spider-Man themed level. So you come into heroes and villains from him. In each sort of, I don't know, section of gameplay, you're either fighting a bunch of enemies, doing like a sort of like light platformer stuff, or you're fighting a boss. And it sounds like it would get old, but each of the characters, I think, and this is a big win, especially coming off Far From Home and I'm in a superhero mood. I've just played through Insomniac Spider-Man again. The characters feel like them who they should be. I think a couple of them it opens on the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it is a bit jarring to be like, whoa, this isn't Chris Pratt, this isn't Dave Bautista. And some of them are doing impressions of like the MCU heroes. Robert Downey Jr. gets an impressionist, Chris Pratt gets an impressionist, but some of them are different. But they work, they feel like their characters, and I think it's just, if you love the Marvel universe, not necessarily the MCU, but the comics and every sort of different inspirational
Everything that's out there right now.
You'll have a good time with it, I think. I think it'll scratch an itch.
I feel like that's what they're going for. Like, obviously they knew that Endgame was going to be this massive media event, and a whole lot of us coming out of Endgame just wanted to play as some of our favorite heroes and mash them all together. And I feel like that's what this is. And plus, like, it's kind of Square Enix's take of kind of inadvertently dropped the ball with the way that thing's been revealed and received in terms of the casting and stuff and the way that people look. So maybe this is just one big excuse to just enjoy a whole bunch of comic book ephemera for now.
That's what it is.
I do love the word ephemera.
I don't think they're going to do it. At least they haven't introduced it yet in the 3 hours I've played. But I want a sort of hub area like they had in the original games
with
where
a
you
quiz.
could just with a quiz.
There was a trivia quiz.
I want to test my knowledge. There's loads of quizzes on WhatCulture.com. But I want a sort of area like that where I can just explore the MCU without the hecticness of action. That sounds kind of weird, but it's nice to have some downtime, like you said, to sort of break up the action. Otherwise, it might become monotonous and repetitive. But so far, it's scratching an itch. It is not better than I expected, but it is very, very solid.
So your takeaway comment right now is that you're nicely satisfied. You messaged me last night and you said it's addictive.
It's very addictive.
So you're quite positive at the minute, but we will have more on Friday. But your takeaway thoughts?
It is very good. It is very solid. If you like the other games, this is a real return to form. If you like the MCU, there is something here for you. Even if you don't like the roster, which I was worried about going into it, the characters I didn't expect to love, I have fallen in love with. There is what I think the best thing about it is that each character, even if they're in the same class, even if they're all web slingers, they feel distinct and individual, which I think the other games lacked. This could all go to pot if the next 7 or whatever hours just become repetitive slogs, but for now, it has scratched a delicious itch.
Good. So you guys can all come back on Friday. We'll have our review up as soon as possible. Our embargo is on the afternoon on Friday, but right now, as I record this, I don't know whether I'm allowed to tell you the time, but it's definitely on Friday afternoon. So yes, please come back on Friday for all of our thoughts for that. For now, though, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I hate that. It's too loud.